Los Angeles never truly sleeps. Beneath the glittering skyline and neon billboards of Hollywood, the streets tell a different story of survival, struggle, and moments that define human character. Among the city's unseen souls was Frank, a homeless man who had fallen through the cracks of society. Once a working-class man with dreams and dignity, life had dealt him a cruel hand, leaving him to navigate the harsh streets with nothing but a tattered coat and his only friend, a scruffy golden brown mutt named Buddy. Frank and Buddy had been inseparable for years. Where Frank went, Buddy followed. The dog wasn't just a pet, was family, protector, and the only warmth Frank had in a world that often felt cold. Together, they made a home out of sidewalks and alleyways, relying on each other to get through each day. But on this particular night, as the city hummed with its usual indifference, fate had something different in store. A cruel encounter was about to unfold on that would test the limits of cruelty and kindness, one that would remind the world that true heroism doesn't always wear a cape. And watching from the shadows was a man who had built his life playing heroes on screen. Only tonight, he wouldn't be acting. Tonight, Keanu Reeves was about to prove why some legends are. The night air in Los Angeles carried a strange mix of warmth and unease. The streets, still alive with traffic and neon lights, hummed with the usual city noise, distant sirens, revving engines, and the occasional chatter of late-night wanderers. But in one dimly lit alley, just off Hollywood Boulevard, a cruel act was about to unfold, one that would change the course of the night for several lives. The encounter. An older homeless man sat on the pavement, his back resting against the cold brick wall of a closed-down convenience store. His name was Frank, and his only true companion in the world was a scruffy, golden brown mutt named Buddy. The dog had been with him for years, through rain and hunger, through moments of despair and fleeting hope. Frank gently stroked Buddy's matted fur, whispering words of reassurance, as if the dog could understand all the weight he carried in his heart. In many ways, Buddy was the only reason Frank had kept going. The sound of heavy boots clunking against the pavement interrupted the quiet moment. Frank looked up and saw a large, broad-shouldered man approaching. A biker, dressed in a black leather vest with patches sewn onto it, a bandana covering his head, and a cruel smirk plastered across his face. A group of other bikers lingered a few feet behind him, watching with casual amusement. Well, what do we have here?" the biker said, his voice dripping with mockery. He nudged a discarded beer can with his boot. "A fine night to be lying around in the trash, huh, old man?" Frank remained quiet, choosing not to engage. Over the years, he had learned that silence was often the safest response when confronted by people looking for trouble. But Buddy, ever the loyal protector, growled softly, positioning himself between Frank and the biker. The biker raised an eyebrow. "Oh, this little mutt think he's tough," he chuckled, shaking his head. "I hate stray dogs." Frank tensed, sensing what was coming, but before he could react, the biker lifted his foot and delivered a swift, heartless kick to Buddy's side. A sharp, pained yelp echoed through the alley. Buddy tumbled a few feet, whimpering as he struggled to regain his footing. Frank's heart clenched. "Buddy," he cried, scrambling toward his dog. The bikers behind the leader laughed, as if it were all just another meaningless moment in their night, but their laughter was cut short by the sound of an approaching voice, low, controlled, and unmistakably firm. That was a mistake. The intervention. The group turned to see a man emerging from the shadows of the alley. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit jacket and jeans, his black hair slightly unkempt. His beard was trimmed, but the piercing intensity of his eyes was the first thing that caught their attention. Keanu Reeves stepped forward, his posture relaxed but his presence commanding. The biker scoffed, "And who the hell are you?" Keanu tilted his head slightly, the corners of his lips twitching in something that could have been a smirk, but his eyes remained cold. "Just someone who doesn't tolerate cruelty." The biker sized him up, unfazed. "That's so." He stepped forward, towering over Keanu by a few inches. "Look, man, this ain't your business. Go play hero somewhere else." Keanu didn't move. "Hurting those who can't fight back, that's a coward's move." His voice was quiet but carried weight. Something in the way he said it, calm, almost detached, made the other bikers hesitate. They exchanged uncertain glances, suddenly aware that they had picked the wrong person to cross. But the leader wasn't backing down. "You think you're some kind of badass," he chuckled, cracking his knuckles. "I don't care who you are, walk away before you regret it." Keanu let out a small breath, as if he had been hoping to avoid this. "I was hoping you'd be smarter than this." Before the biker could react, Keanu moved. In one smooth motion, he pivoted, sweeping the biker's leg out from under him. The large man went down hard, landing on his back with a thud. Before he could scramble up, Keanu was on him, one knee pressing down on his chest, his forearm pinning the biker's wrist. The alley was silent. The other bikers froze, not daring to step in. Keanu leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You like picking on those weaker than you. Try it again, and I'll make sure you know what that feels like." The biker's cocky bravado had completely vanished. He swallowed hard. Okay, he muttered. "I get it. I'm done." Keanu held his gaze for a long second before finally releasing him. He stood up as the biker scrambled backward, red-faced and humiliated. His gang, once so eager to laugh, now looked at him with disappointment and unease. "Let's get out of here," one of them muttered. The leader, still glaring, muttered a curse under his breath before turning away. Within moments, they had all disappeared into the night. The aftermath. Keanu exhaled, then turned back to Frank and Buddy. The homeless man was still crouched by his dog, gently running his hands over the pup's fur to make sure he wasn't injured. Keanu knelt down. "He okay?" Frank looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude. I think so, just scared." Keanu reached out a hand, and Buddy, still trembling, sniffed it cautiously. Then, as if sensing the kindness in the men before him, the dog leaned forward, pressing his wet nose against Keanu's palm. A small smile crossed Keanu's face as he scratched behind Buddy's ears. "You're a tough little guy." Frank wiped at his eyes. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "People don't usually step in for guys like us." Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded stack of bills. He handed it to Frank without hesitation. "Find a safe place for the night," Keanu said, "and some food for Buddy, too." Frank's hands trembled as he accepted the money. I can't take this." "You can," Keanu said firmly, "and you should." Frank nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. He looked down at Buddy, then back at Keanu. "I don't know how to repay you." Keanu stood up, offering him a small smile. "Just take care of him." As Keanu stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as quietly as he had arrived, Frank looked down at Buddy, who wagged his tail weakly, nuzzling his side. "Looks like we met an angel tonight." "Huh, Buddy." Buddy barked softly in agreement, and somewhere in the heart of Los Angeles, under the neon glow of the city, a legend had just reminded the world why he was truly one of a kind. Kindness is a choice that has the power to change lives. While not everyone can step in like Keanu Reeves did in this story, we all have the ability to stand up for those who cannot defend themselves. Every day, countless people and animals suffer from cruelty, neglect, and hardship, but small acts of compassion, offering a meal to someone in need, donating to local shelters, or simply speaking up against injustice can make a real difference. Be the person who chooses kindness, stand up for the vulnerable, and remember, true heroism isn't about fame or fortune, it's about having the courage to do what's right, even when no one is watching. If this story inspired you, consider supporting a local homeless shelter or an animal rescue organization, because sometimes, the smallest gestures have the biggest impact.